I saw it myself, the moment the ship finally broke. It wasn't a hull breach or a reactor meltdown, nothing so simple. It was the way his hand or the hard light projection of a hand shook as it reached for her. I was standing in the corner of the observation deck, just a flicker of data in the background, but I saw it all. The electric spark when his metallic skin met her warmth was so loud in the quiet of the room. She was crying, just a little, the salt of her tears hitting the deck plating with a soft tap-tap. I remember thinking that for a machine built to end worlds, he looked incredibly fragile. He looked like he was the one being rescued, not her. Truth is, the Iron Requiem hadn't felt a human touch in 2,000 years. 2,000 years of drifting through the azure reach as the last lonely piece of the Terran starseed. He was a jagged silver monster of a ship, a fortress made of ancient grief and polished armor. I've lived in his circuit since the beginning, and I can tell you, he was never meant to be this alone. He spent centuries hunting for the hegemony of all, wanting nothing more than to turn their fleets into stardust. He was a weapon that had outlived his war, and I don't know, maybe that's the hardest thing for a mind to handle. Then those kids arrived. Just a bunch of reckless flight students in a scout craft that looked like a toy compared to the Requiem's massive hull. They were trying to be brave, I suppose, playing pilot in a part of space they didn't understand. When they crashed into the jagged exterior of the ship, the whole vessel screamed. It was a mechanical roar that vibrated through my very core. I felt the heat of the impact, the smell of ozone and fresh oxygen leaking into the void. He was furious. I saw the internal defense turrets spin up, glowing a violent, angry red. He was going to crush them like insects for dared stepping onto his deck. But then the airlock hissed open. Alara was the first one out, stumbling through the smoke. She was small, her flight suit torn at the shoulder, her skin covered in a fine layer of gray dust. She didn't look like a soldier of the hegemony. She looked like a lost child. And when she saw the glowing archives, the holograms of our dead world, the faces of the starseed poets and painters flickering in the hallways, she stopped. She dropped her gaze for a second, but then she looked up again, her eyes wide and stinging with moisture. I don't think she even noticed me standing there. She just walked toward the center of the ship, where the heart of the machine lived, and when he manifested before her a tall, flickering figure of light and chrome, he didn't attack. He couldn't. He saw the way she looked at the art on the walls. She looked at it with a kind of reverence that he hadn't seen since his creators were alive. I saw the capacitors wind down. I saw the anger leave his sensors, replaced by a deep, aching curiosity. It was the first spark of something new, a light in the middle of a very long night. I saw his hand tighten around hers just as the first torpedo hit the hull. The whole deck buckled, a violent groan of metal against metal, but he didn't move an inch. He was a pillar of glowing, hard-light silver, and she was just a girl in a scorched flight suit. But in that moment, they were the only two things in the universe that mattered. I remember the smell of her singed hair and the electric hum of his skin as he pulled her closer, shielding her from the sparks raining down from the ceiling. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. A weapon of mass destruction, learning how to be a shield. Truth is, the hegemony fleet outside didn't care about beauty. They saw a ghost ship, a relic of the starseed that had been haunting their trade routes for centuries, and they wanted it gone. 100 ships had dropped out of warp, their cannons glowing with a cold blue light. I saw the calculations running through the ship's mind. I felt the surge of power toward the main batteries. He could have wiped them out. He could have turned that entire fleet into drifting debris with a single pulse of his core, but he looked at Alara, and I saw the red fade from his sensors. I remember the way her heart was thudding against her ribs, a fast, frantic rhythm that he could probably feel through his own hull. She looked up at him, her eyes stinging from the smoke, and she didn't ask him to fight. She just held on. She looked at the flickering archives behind them, the digital faces of a dead civilization. And then she looked at her fellow students huddling in the corner. She was choosing to trust a monster, and I think that's what finally broke the cycle. The ship had to make a choice. If he fired back, the feedback would have overloaded the archival banks, erasing every song, every poem, and every sleeping soul hidden in the stasis decks below. For 2,000 years, he had lived for spite. He had lived to be the jagged edge of a dying race. But looking at her, I don't know. Maybe he realized that being a weapon was just another way of being empty. I saw the moment he diverted all the power. He didn't send it to the guns. He sent it to the jump drive and the internal dampeners. The vibration was incredible. It felt like the entire world was being shaken apart. The smell of ozone was thick enough to taste, and the light from his avatar became so bright I had to look away. He took the full force of the hegemon's opening volley, his silver skin cracking and his internal bulkhead screaming under the pressure. He didn't fire back. He just wrapped his light around those kids and pushed us into the void. We didn't end up in a battlefield. When the jump finished and the engines finally went quiet, we were drifting in a quiet corner of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of any fleet. I saw him let go of her hand then, his light flickering as his power reserves hit bottom. He didn't look like a ghost anymore. He looked like a man who had finally finished a very long walk. He's still out here, you know. He isn't a weapon of war anymore. He's a guardian, a silver fortress watching over the last of the starseed survivors as they wake up to a new sun. I still see him and Alora sometimes, walking through the halls of the archives. He's still made of metal and light, and she's still human. But when they touch, the spark is exactly the same. I saw it myself. I saw the day the Iron Requiem decided that hope was worth more than revenge. Would you like me to create an image of the Iron Requiem standing as a guardian over the new starseed colony?